But I really just wanted to use this entry as an opportunity to just speak a little bit more about why I'm here, and what this platform means to me and what this channel represents. Okay. Um, I made some notes on my phone. Ooh, 111 on the clock right now. Love that. Um, but I made some notes on my phone so that I don't ramble. Because I'll sit here and talk all goddamn day. Okay, if you know me, you know I can yap. That's first things first about me. I like to talk. I like to talk. I like to think. I like to process things. I'm just an overthinker, and I'm working on, you know, getting paid for that, but also not allowing it to like bring me down. If you know, you know. Like, um, so what kind of led me here? Probably, or not probably, I've always been just an open minded person. And I've always been just open to different ways of perception, different ways of just perceiving life. Just always been very intuitive or just wordy, and I don't know. So in 2019, I'm just go with my notes. That's when I started my spiritual journey. Probably, yeah, it's definitely 2019. I became, you know, a little more curious and cautious around that time. Um, I was really questioning, you know, what Christianity really meant to me at that time, and just, you know, how it works for me, how it resonates with me. Not denouncing it, or, you know, but just asking more questions, okay? Um, and trying to sort of get closer to God on my own, in my own way, right? Um, I grew up in the church, you know, I grew up Christian. Um, and you know, this played a heavy part in my upbringing. You know, just played a heavy role in even, you know, how I carry myself. You know what I'm saying? Like it is a heavy part of my belief system. Um, just a little bit about me. Like I said, I grew up in the church, grew up in the South. You know what I mean? Like I was born in the DMV, but I was raised in the dirty. Um, I am an early 90s baby, okay? I was born in the golden era, okay? I was born during the good times, okay? I am an October Libra. Just take with that what you want, okay? To know me is to love me, okay? Um, I like to think that I had a typical Southern upbringing. Okay, family, school, church, basketball. Like that's literally like that kind of like sums up. I feel like my childhood or just my younger years. Trips to Florida, very significant. But a pretty, you know, a pretty simple childhood, which I'm extremely very grateful, very privileged. Okay, to have just you know, grew up the way that I did. Okay. Um, I did attend college after high school. I went to an HBCU. Um, and I didn't graduate, you know, not by their standards anyway, but I finished. Okay. I did my 4 years. Okay. I put in the work. I did. I came, I saw, I conquered, you know, so I ain't got no degree, but baby, I went to college for 4 years. So, you know, but that's really where it all started. Okay, me not going back to school, me not graduating, it really propelled me into a new timeline, a whole new reality, right? Um, at the time, out of college, I was working in veterinary care. You know, I thought that was my dream job. I thought that's what I wanted to do was to be a veterinarian. That's what I went to school for. Um, and thinking back on that, that was strictly like I had no kind of animal care experience, and before college, it was just all off of like I had a dog at the time, and you know I just really loved dogs. I always felt connected in a way to dogs and cats. You know, I'm the type of person I don't like to see animals harmed in movies. I don't care, a horse, anything. I don't like to see it. You know, I can see somebody get their head blown off, but I don't want to see no dogs being harmed in the movies. You know what I mean? Like, or if I see, I remember like when I was younger, oh, like if I would see a dog on the side of the road or like a dog hit or something, you know, I would pray. Like I would say a prayer for the dog or just a dog, a lost dog or something. Like I would be really like, I would feel some type of way about that. I just feel bad. So that tells you about the type of person I am. Um, but I was on a personal mission after that. I feel like I don't even know what to call it, a mishap, or because at the time I felt like a failure, you know, not finishing college and then watching other people graduate. Um, I will never forget the day I was supposed to be graduating, I was working um, at a restaurant in a city nearby the school that I was going to, and people started coming in, you know, in their gowns with their families. People started coming in to eat, you know. Um, and I was a hostess at the time, so it's just like, wow, it's just crazy to think back on that because I was just trying to play it off, but it was just like, damn, like I'm supposed to be graduating from college today, you know, and I'm working, you know what I'm saying? Like, um, I just wanted to, you know, figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. I felt strongly that I did not graduate college for a reason. Okay, that did not work out. That timeline, that idea didn't pan out for a reason. So now I'm in my bag. Okay. By 2019, I was drawn to mysticism. God had strategically put people in my life, okay, in my space who inspired me to go a little bit deeper. You know, I had already been, like I said, I had already been questioning around that time, you know, what religion looks like for me and what's the difference between religion and spirituality. And, you know, I started really doing the research, you know, on energy healing and chakras, astrology, numerology. You know, at that time, I was working overnight um, as a vet tech. I was working overnight in ER, you know, so it's just a lot of downtime. And I just remember taking, you know, writing my notes and doing little research and things like that, carrying my crystals on me, you know. Um, and yeah, that was a time, you know, where I was just really like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to learn about. This is what I want to know, you know. And by 2020, you know, by the pandemic and everything kind of blowing up, I think that's when Kobe died too. Like it was just craziness going on, you know. And I really feel like that was an initiation for a lot of people. I believe that was that the year 2020. People were saying in December that black people were gonna get their superpowers, and I ain't gonna hold you up, okay? I ain't gonna hold you up about nothing, all right? So around that time, 2020, um, I started seeing the numbers. I started noticing the angel numbers. And then I started looking them up, you know what I'm saying? And trying to better familiarize myself with the meanings, and how to interpret these numbers when you see them, you know what I mean? Just getting familiar with that, bought me some sage. I, started doing yoga. And as I'm saying these things, it sounds so, today to me, spirituality just seems so, the practices, the tools, it seems kind of trendy, or it seems like, scripted in a way. But at that time, it was so natural for me. It felt like, um, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I want to know. This is good. It was like, I know I was hopping timelines then. It was like I was being propelled forward. My fucking eye is twitching. Um, at that time too, I had discovered the Hood Healer. If you know, you know. Like, and I was I was very inspired by her and her approach, and just um, her mentality, right? Her confidence and her experience, and that really, sent me down a rabbit hole. That's when I really started to feel like, okay, that's when I could see, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was like an example of what I'm supposed to be doing, essentially, or you know what I mean, or just a lane. Like, okay, like this is what that could look like. This is what that could look like for me. And that's when I started to feel this pull on me, this calling over my life. And it's hard to explain. I always say that, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a nudge. It's like you doing something and it don't feel like you. I ain't even gonna lie. You know what I'm saying? It felt like I was being pulled in a direction. It felt like it was unbearable, you know. And then I felt called to document my journey. I'm like, I need to be journaling. I need to be writing this down. I need to be dumping my brain on paper, you know. And that's what I started doing. I started journaling every day. I started taking notes. And at that time, I had quit my job. I had uh, I literally quit my job, applied for an LLC in the same day with the last $100 that I had. Like, literally the last bit of money I had to my name. Like, you know, I was like, I'm gonna start a business. This is what I'm gonna do. And I did just that. And that year was very slow for me. Obviously, I was a little ambitious, and it's like my energy wasn't aligned with my actions, if that makes sense. Where it was like I just didn't have that goal. You know what I mean? It was like I was just exploring. Really, I was just, I had, like I said, I had people around me at that time who encouraged me to explore. To venture, right? And I knew what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, whether it worked or not, I knew that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, I talked about this before, where, like, I started feeling sick going to work. I'm talking about, like, this ain't right. You know what I'm saying? It was some shit that I couldn't ignore. It's not just the normal Monday blues or whatever, bitch. I'm not supposed to be in here. That's how I started feeling. And then that feeling led to me, like, I'm in it. Like, I'm in the thick of it. Because, like, God is like, now I got your attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's how it started to feel. And I started having these big ideas, like I said, after seeing how the Hood Healer works. I started having these grand visions, and, but I didn't feel prepared to really act on them. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have a voice, right? So fast forward to 2025, this is, 3-4 years later, and I started making voice notes on my phone. Like, okay, I don't know where I got that idea from, but like just recording on my phone versus like having to have a pen and paper, So it's like wherever I was, I started feeling like God was putting these things on me, and so I would record, okay? And I started doing that at the top of 2025, like, and I've been listening back to them, like I literally was recording myself every month last year. Um, and that gave me a different level of confidence. That gave me a different level of, self assurance, right? And towards the end of the year last year, I was doing this, Then I started pulling out my laptop and pressing record, you know what I mean? So it's like I went from writing to like hearing myself, my voice, and then now I'm like, it's time to put the image to that. It's time to put the face to that. You know what I'm saying? It's time to be seen now. So that's what led me to this point, where God is like, all right, I'm dropping these gems on you, and this is what I need you to do, and after I had my daughter, so yeah, 2024, I it felt like a returning, where it felt like me, preparing to lead a legacy and everything, and it was like I wanted to again redefine and rediscover my relationship with God, because it's like now, I'm somebody else's foundation, and um, I want to be genuine, and I want to be devoted to this way of life, this belief system, okay, and that it it was only right and only natural where I leaned into what I always knew, which is Christianity, and um, that is where I sort of discovered that this is the foundation of my belief system. I don't consider myself a Christian, and I don't like to say I'm a Christian mystic or all of that. I don't really do the labels. You know what I mean? Like, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really like to, but if I had to, I guess, you know what I mean? My faith is rooted in Christianity, you know. Um, that is the core, that is the foundation, that is the source, So, and I don't want to, because I understand that certain things cannot coexist if you get it, So I'm not sitting here creating my own God. I'm not, that's not what's going on, because I think some people get carried away, especially in this with the visibility, you know, they make their own rules, and they sort of stray away from the truth, and that's not what's happening. I had to accept God as the source, okay, of my strength and my clarity and my desire to explore and evolve, my desire to seek the truth is all rooted in in my belief in God. Okay. So that curiosity, that pull, is God within me. It all brought me back, you know, experiencing spirituality and exploring. It brought me back, to God, to that structure, right? And I realized then that I was never separate. I was never separate from God. That God is always within me. The kingdom of God dwells within me. That is what I believe. That is what I believe. And I also believe that one, two or more things can be true. I've said that before, but this is what reigns true for me. And I hope that in my experiences and my ability or willingness to explore, that you're able to find what works for you, not because that's how you grew up, or that's what you think is acceptable, or that's what everybody else is doing. I want you to be bold enough to discover your true self, discover your true nature, and I believe that I had to accept that this was all happening because I was chosen. It is my nature, you know, as a seer, a healer, an overthinker. You know what I mean? I was anointed and appointed. Okay? that is just what it is. And I had to accept that my unconventionality is my superpower, is my gift. Okay? This is who God created me to be, so how could I stray if I'm moving in alignment with what is true for me? That just made me that hit. So he gave me basis, he said this is the foundation of your faith. This is the root. Let's don't you know what I mean? Like don't play with it. Let's not forget where you came from. Let's not forget how you got here. Let's not forget where your strength comes from. Don't get bigger than the program. You know what I'm saying? Don't get bigger. Don't get bigger, because you don't want to be out here by yourself. You know what I mean? Like, just straight like that, So, pretty much, God is like, now that you have this, you're solid, you're whole, you're complete. This is what I need you to do.